In 1576, on a small island between Denmark and Sweden, something unprecedented was taking place. A Danish nobleman, Tycho Brahe, was building the world's first modern research institution, a magnificent observatory complex called Uraniborg. Before telescopes, before universities had research departments, before scientific journals existed, Tycho Brahe created something entirely new, a purpose-built facility where teams of researchers worked together using cutting-edge instruments to conduct systematic observations of the heavens. Let's step back in time to explore how this remarkable place functioned and why it holds significance in the history of science. Our story begins with a brilliant young astronomer who had a problem. Tycho Brahe had already made his mark on European science by observing a new star in 1572. What we now know was a supernova. This discovery challenged the Aristotelian belief that the heavens were unchanging and perfect. But Tycho needed a permanent place to continue his work. Fortunately, he had caught the attention of King Frederick II of Denmark, who offered him something extraordinary: the small island of Hveen, located in the Øresund Strait between Denmark and Sweden. The island measured about 3 miles long by 1.5 miles wide, with approximately 40 farms and a population of around 200 people, living primarily in a village called Tuna. In this isolated yet accessible location, Tycho would build his dream. In February 1576, Tycho received a letter from King Frederick offering him the island, noting that it might just suit me for both astronomy and chemistry. The king's patronage was remarkably generous. Tycho was granted the island for his lifetime and received an annual income of 500 dalas, equivalent to almost 8 times the salary of a university professor. The king's only stipulation was that Tycho continue and follow his Studia Mathematicis and keep the tenants who live there under law and right. This arrangement provided Tycho with both the resources and the freedom to create something revolutionary. On August 8th, 1576, the ceremonial cornerstone for Uraniborg was laid at sunrise by the French ambassador Charles Dancy. The name Uraniborg means Castle of Urania, honoring the Greek muse of astronomy. Tycho's design for Uraniborg was unlike anything seen before, a hybrid of palace, laboratory, and observatory. The main building was square with 49-foot sides, featuring semicircular bays on the north and south facades. What made it unique was its precise orientation. The corners of the building were aligned precisely to the four compass points, allowing the accurate astronomical measurements. The interior was equally impressive. The cellar contained a chemical laboratory with 16 furnaces, a glass-making oven, storage rooms, and even a small prison for recalcitrant tenants. The first floor housed 4 guest rooms, including one with a massive mural quadrant for celestial observations. There was also a well appointed kitchen and an extensive library with approximately 500 volumes, and an enormous collection for that time. On the second floor, you would find a large summer sitting room with several colored theme rooms, including the King's and Queen's rooms for royal visitors. The attic provided lodging for approximately 8 apprentices, Tycho's scientific assistants. Perhaps most impressive was the innovative water system, extremely rare in the 16th century buildings. Running water was supplied to the principal rooms through lead pipes, installed by a German plumber named Leubenwolf, using materials from Nuremberg. Uraniborg wasn't just a building, but the center of a carefully designed complex. The main house was surrounded by a square wall measuring 248 feet on each side, with pavilions at the midpoint of each wall. The eastern and western gate portals contained kennels, servant quarters, a printing establishment, and that small prison we mentioned earlier. Within the walls were elaborate gardens with flowered parterres arranged in geometric patterns, symbolizing the harmony Tycho saw between human design and cosmic order. But by 1584, Tycho had identified a problem with Uraniborg's observations. Despite its solid construction, winds on the exposed island caused subtle vibrations that affected the precision of his instruments. His solution was characteristically ingenious: build a second observatory underground. About 70 paces south of Uraniborg, Tycho built Stjerneborg, also known as the Castle of the Stars. This facility was constructed mainly below ground level, specifically to stabilize astronomical instruments and shield them from wind effects. The design consisted of a small central square chamber connected to 4 circular crypts. The central heated room, called the hypocastum, included alcoves where Tycho and his students could rest during long nights of observation. Each of the circular crypts housed specific instruments: the tremendous equatorial armilla for measuring celestial coordinates, a revolving quadrant with a 153 centimeter radius, the zodiacal armilla for eclipse measurements, the great steel quadrant, a 4-cubit sextant resting on a revolving globe. These instruments were mounted on stone pillars and accessed by circular steps, providing exceptional stability. This design was revolutionary, the first purpose-built underground scientific facility. The walls of Sternberg were decorated with portraits of great astronomers: Timacaris, Hipparchus, Ptolemy, Albertani, Alfonso X, Copernicus, and of course, Tycho himself. Above the entrance was a Ionic portal featuring 3 crowned lions and the inscription Nec facies nec appas solo artis scitara paranont. Neither worldly power nor riches, art alone survives. This sentiment captured Tycho's belief that scientific knowledge would outlast political power and material wealth, a remarkably modern perspective for the 16th century. Its instruments truly made Uraniborg revolutionary, 28 in total, many designed by Tycho himself. These represented the absolute pinnacle of pre telescopic astronomy, with accuracy far surpassing anything that had come before. The centerpiece was the great mural quadrant installed on the southwest wall of Uraniborg's first floor. With a nearly 7-foot radius, this massive instrument was fixed to a wall painted with Tycho's portrait and a cross section of Uraniborg. It allowed measurements of a star's altitude as it crossed the meridian with unprecedented precision, down to about 1 arc minute, or 1/60th of a degree. In the northern observatory, Tycho installed a triquetrum with a 16-foot diameter azimuth circle, a sextant with a 4-foot radius, and a double arc for measuring small distances. The southern observatory contained a vertical semicircle with a horizontal circle for measuring azimuths, another triquetrum, a sextant with a 5.5-foot radius, and a quadrant with a 2-foot radius. The collection's crown jewel was a 5-foot brass celestial globe in the library, costing 5,000 dalas, an enormous sum at the time. This globe served as both a reference and a record, with Tycho methodically adding new star positions as they were verified through observation. What made these instruments revolutionary wasn't just their size, but their precision. Tycho insisted on multiple verifications for each measurement, with different observers using different instruments to check each other's work. His observations achieved accuracy within 1 to 2 arc minutes, a 5 to 10-fold improvement over previous astronomical measurements. This level of precision seems even more remarkable when we consider that all these observations were made without the aid of telescopes, which wouldn't be applied to astronomy until Galileo's work nearly 30 years later. What was daily life like at this unprecedented scientific institution? Uraniborg operated within a structured routine familiar to modern research facilities. The household followed the ancient Roman concept of familia, encompassing all who served under Tycho's direction. The staff of 20 to 25 people included students, instrument makers, printers, and domestic servants. Tycho's wife managed the household, overseeing food preparation and supervising the staff. Each day began early. Servants typically rose at 3 to 4 a.m., with assistants joining later. The household followed a strict meal schedule. Breakfast consisted of warm beer and herring, or rye porridge, followed by a midday meal that began at 9 to 10 a.m., featuring 3 or 4 courses. Beer consumption was substantial, 4 to 8 quarts per person per day, as it was a safer alternative to water contaminated with parasites. At meals, the chaplain would open with prayer, with Tycho, his wife, and guests eating at the main table, servants in the kitchen, and unpaid workers at the grange outside. Tycho typically maintained 8 to 12 educated assistants at any given time, who received room, board, new shoes and clothing at Christmas, and other gifts. These assistants came from across Europe: Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Holland, Germany, and England, and were typically in their early 20s. The real work happened at night. Assistants worked in teams of three, with the most experienced serving as leader. One held a lantern and read sightings, another called out the time, and the third entered figures in a log. Multiple teams often made the same observations to check for inconsistencies. The work schedule ran from dusk to dawn, weather permitting. Assistants would sleep until early afternoon, then analyze the previous night's observations before beginning new observations at dusk. A typical year included between 150 and 185 observation sessions. Tycho reviewed all data, meticulously entering verified observations into ledgers for future classification. Everything was recorded on paper manufactured at Hveen, watermarked with a view of Uraniborg. For recreation, distinguished visitors were entertained in the Great Summer Room or library. Guests included scientific colleagues and royalty. Queen Sophia of Denmark visited in 1586, and King James VI of Scotland, later James I of England, came in 1590 with his new bride. What made Uraniborg extraordinary was its comprehensive approach to science. Beyond the observatories, Tycho created an entire ecosystem of scientific production. In 1584, he established his own printing press, hiring the German printer Christopher Wrede to operate it. This allowed Tycho to control the publication of his findings and ensure their quality. Works produced here included Latin poems, astronomical calendars, and his observations of the 1577 comet. By 1590, paper shortages had become a problem. Tycho's solution was characteristically ambitious. He built his own paper mill, powered by a system of dammed fish ponds. The chemical laboratory in Uraniborg's cellar was equally impressive, with 16 furnaces for experiments and distillation. Here, Tycho developed Tycho's elixir, which became widely sold as a remedy for epidemic diseases. His free distribution of these medicines from his laboratory angered professional physicians, but demonstrated his wide ranging scientific interests. The facility also included workshops for instrument makers, with the goldsmith Hans Koll managing Tycho's instrument workshop. Tycho employed artisans, sculptors, and architects to refine his instruments, resulting in ever increasing precision. Beyond the main complex, Uraniborg included farm buildings, a mill for grinding corn, workshops for preparing hides and parchment for book covers, fish ponds, and fruit orchards, with approximately 300 fruit trees. This self contained scientific world cost an estimated 75,000 dalas, funded jointly by Tycho and King Frederick, equivalent to the annual tax revenue from a small province. Nothing on this scale had existed before in the history of science. What did this unprecedented institution accomplish? The scientific achievements at Uraniborg were extraordinary, establishing foundations that still influence astronomy today. Tycho's most famous contribution was his star catalog, a comprehensive listing of 777 fixed stars, with positions measured with unprecedented accuracy. Previous star catalogs typically had errors of 10 arc minutes or more. Tycho reduced these to about 1 to 2 arc minutes, a 5 to 10 fold improvement. This catalog remained the gold standard for astronomers until telescopic observations became common decades later. Between 1577 and 1596, Tycho observed and studied 7 comets, proving that they were celestial objects rather than atmospheric phenomena. This directly challenged the Aristotelian view that had dominated for centuries and provided evidence against the existence of solid celestial spheres supposedly carrying the planets. His observations of lunar eclipses revealed several previously unknown aspects of lunar motion, including the variation of the moon and irregularities in the motion of the lunar nodes. Perhaps most significantly, Tycho developed his cosmological model in 1582, the Taconic system, as an alternative to the Ptolemaic and Copernican models. In this hybrid geo-heliocentric system, the Earth remains stationary at the center of the universe, with the sun and moon revolving around it. The planets, however, revolved around the sun as it orbited the Earth. This compromise preserved what Tycho considered the best elements of both systems, while avoiding what he saw as their flaws. Though eventually superseded by the fully heliocentric model, the Taconic system represents a crucial transitional stage in astronomical understanding. Ironically, Tycho's meticulously accurate observations, particularly of Mars, would later allow Johannes Kepler to formulate his laws of planetary motion and definitively prove that planets move in elliptical orbits around the sun. Uraniborg's golden age didn't last. After King Frederick II died in 1588, Tycho's position gradually weakened. Young King Christian IV, ascending to full power in 1596, systematically withdrew Tycho's funding and privileges. By 1597, Tycho had lost approximately 2,400 dalas in annual revenue, making Uraniborg's operations financially unsustainable. On April 29, 1597, he left Hveen permanently with his family, assistants, and portable equipment. Only the 4 largest instruments remained behind. After unsuccessful attempts to reconcile with King Christian, Tycho eventually found a new patron in Emperor Rudolf II of the Holy Roman Empire. He moved to Prague in 1599, where he spent his final years. After Tycho's departure, Uraniborg fell into disrepair. By 1602, much of the equipment had been removed or destroyed. Only the foundations remain visible today. Excavations have confirmed the building's original dimensions and layout. But Uraniborg's legacy extends far beyond its physical structure. It established a model for how scientific research could be conducted, with teams of trained assistants, purpose-built facilities, specialized instruments, and institutional support. The modern research laboratory, university science department, and government research agency all owe a debt to Tycho's pioneering vision. Uraniborg represented something entirely new in the history of science, not just an observatory, but a comprehensive research institution. For 20 years, this island complex was the center of European astronomy, the site of the most accurate celestial observations ever made without telescopic aid. Tycho Brahe created a model that would eventually transform how science was conducted by integrating observation, theory, instruction, and publication in a single facility. Uraniborg demonstrated the value of systematic observation, precise measurement, and institutional support for scientific progress. Though the buildings are gone, Uraniborg's scientific legacy lives on in modern astronomy and scientific research organizations. As Tycho's motto at Stjerneborg proclaimed, neither worldly power nor riches, art alone survives.